In countries like Britain and France, most of us are not Muslims, and we do not believe in Muhammad as the founder of any faith that we follow. People are Christians, atheists, all sorts of things. You cannot expect, and this is the crucial thing, Muslims should not expect non-Muslims to abide by their...
Douglas Murray, a British author and political commentator, has often voiced his opinions on Al Jazeera, particularly concerning the tensions between Western values and Islamic practices. His views spark significant debate as they touch upon sensitive issues of free speech, religious beliefs, and cultural integration in Western societies. To delve into this topic, it is crucial to examine Murray's arguments, the context in which they arise, and the broader implications for societies that are grappling with these issues. Douglas Murray is known for his forthright views on Islam and its role in Western societies. His commentary often focuses on the perceived challenges that arise when Islamic beliefs intersect with Western norms and values. In his discussions on Al Jazeera, Murray has repeatedly emphasised that non-Muslims in countries like Britain and France should not be expected to adhere to Islamic laws, such as those concerning blasphemy. This standpoint becomes particularly relevant when incidents occur that highlight the friction between free speech and religious sensitivity.
Do you think this attack will underscore the message of the far right in Europe, at least, of the incompatibility of Islam and the West, or Western values?
That's a pretty atrocious question, if I may say so. We're about 24 hours away from 12 people being gunned down in a newspaper office in the centre of Paris, in a European city, because they offended, allegedly, Islamic blasphemy laws which France, Britain and other European countries do not have and do not believe in and do not follow. And for you to turn the question immediately, not on the people who've been massacred because of asserting their rights as European French citizens, but onto the alleged terrible discrimination of the French is really quite despicable.
So I didn't ask you anything about discrimination of the French. Let me repeat the question.
You went straight on to the alleged backlash.
Let me ask you the question again in case you didn't understand it. Do you think this attack, we are in our news bulletins talking in more detail about the actual attack. What you were invited to discuss in this show are the implications of what might follow the attack. Will it underscore the message of those who say there is an incompatibility between Western values and Muslim values?
No, you want to paint the narrative which you think turns immediately, not from the attackers, but on the French society, which you would like to portray. I'm giving you my answer, so why don't you listen to it? Which you would like to portray as somehow anti-Muslim or anti-Islamic or anything like this. Well, let's start from the fact that 12 people were massacred because European citizens asserted their right, which they have every right to do, to draw Muhammad just as they have the right to draw any other historical figure, which they believe in or don't believe in, it doesn't matter. They have that right. I don't think at this stage whether, a discussion of the far right in France or anything like that is really the point. The point is people were killed and gunned down for doing their job as journalists and cartoonists in a free society.
Okay, let's try with our guest joining us from France. Perhaps she would like to address the question. Do you think there is a message coming out of this, of the incompatibility of Muslim and Western values? It seems our guest in London doesn't want to tackle that. Perhaps you would.
I think that's what the killers would like us to believe. They're French. They were brought up in this country, and they made this choice to become what they've become. They've killed a policeman, for example, who was also from an Algerian background like them, French citizen as well. So I think this is not the issue, and this should never be the issue. This is the issue they want us to address, and they want to make that statement that there is an incompatibility between two worlds. I think they are extremists, and I think we should not let other extremists on the other side who believe that as well, like our extremists here from the right wing or extreme right wing.
One notable instance of Douglas Murray's participation in an Al Jazeera discussion revolved around the tragic attack on the Charlie Hebdo office in Paris. This event, where 12 people were killed by terrorists offended by the magazine's cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad, became a flashpoint for debates about free speech and religious respect. Al Jazeera's coverage of the incident included a segment where Murray was asked about the implications of the attack and whether it would reinforce the far-right narrative of the incompatibility between Western and Islamic values. Murray's response was clear and unyielding. He criticised the idea that the focus should shift to potential backlash against Muslims rather than the attack itself. He argued that such a narrative diverts attention from the fundamental issue, the murder of individuals exercising their right to free speech. This perspective underscores his broader viewpoint that Western societies must uphold their values, including free speech, even in the face of violent opposition. At the heart of Murray's argument is the tension between free speech and religious sensitivity. Western countries, particularly those in Europe, have long prided themselves on upholding free speech as a core value. This principle allows individuals to express their views, even if those views are offensive to some. However, this clashes with the beliefs of many Muslims, for whom depictions of the Prophet Muhammad are considered deeply disrespectful and blasphemous.
Who believe that there is an incompatibility between an Islamic world and a Western world. I think we should never allow this question to be put.
All right, thank you very much. Douglas in London. No doubt there will be a lot of thought as to how policy should proceed going forward. What do you think the policy should be? What are the practical policy lessons learnt from this attack?
Well, there are no practical policy lessons learned. People are still mourning the dead and identifying bodies. The thing that is going to happen in the weeks and days ahead is that people are going to have a set of questions. The first will be obvious security questions, simply about how it was that two people were able to go into the office in Paris with Kalashnikovs and gun people down in cold blood. That will certainly be a part of it. There's a technical security discussion to be had. There's also a discussion about wider society and what its reaction should be and all that sort of thing. But really the most febrile and important discussion at the moment is the one that the free press is having across Europe, which is whether or not they will stand up and retain the right to do what we in Europe and free peoples have the right to do, which is to draw what we like. And the key message from this really can't be emphasized enough, because, you know, your guest in Doha is a cartoonist. He knows very well that he can't draw a cartoon of Muhammad there. Even if he wanted to, he wouldn't, because his life would be at great risk.
I wouldn't do that anyway, sir.
No. And one of the reasons,
you wouldn't do it.
Okay, sir. Maybe it's not just because. Can I just finish my point?
Okay, finish your point. Then we'll give Khalid a chance.
If you are a Muslim, you may decide not to do that. However, in countries like Britain and France, most of us are not Muslims, and we do not believe in Muhammad as the founder of any faith that we follow. People are Christians, atheists, all sorts of things. You cannot expect, and this is the crucial thing, Muslims should not expect non-Muslims to abide by their own belief systems. You can yourself decide, you as a Muslim do not want to depict Muhammad, but the idea that is coming along in Europe at the moment is a growing idea that people who are not Muslims, who do not believe in Muhammad, who do not follow Islam, are also to be have to obey the rules of Islamic blasphemy. And in Europe at the moment, that is the big debate.
You made that point, Douglas.
Oof, you guys, that was a lot. A lot has been said. Now, first of all, you the host, you're asking him questions. You're not allowing him to answer. You're just butting in here and there. Can he answer in peace? Like, can he just answer in peace? Like, you asked him a question, at least allow him the floor to, answer and pass his point. Now, there is a question, of course, that that I would always speak out from every.
Murray posits that while Muslims have the right to refrain from creating or endorsing such depictions, they should not expect non-Muslims to follow the same restrictions. This stance is based on the idea that secular, pluralistic societies cannot be governed by the religious rules of any one group. Instead, these societies must maintain laws and norms that reflect their diverse populations and uphold individual freedoms. A recurring theme in Murray's discourse is the concept of integration and cultural adaptation. He suggests that immigrants, including Muslims who move to Western countries, should adapt to the prevailing cultural norms and legal frameworks of their new homes. This perspective aligns with the adage, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, implying that individuals should conform to the societal norms of the place they inhabit. Critics argue that this viewpoint oversimplifies the complexities of cultural integration and fails to acknowledge the contributions and rights of immigrant communities. They contend that expecting complete assimilation disregards the multicultural nature of modern Western societies and undermines the potential for a more inclusive and harmonious coexistence.
Every of this, interviews, debates, and that we should discuss on. So do you think that the Muslim laws are compatible with the Western laws? Every time we check about this, we always say, when you're in Rome, act like the Romans. When you're in Rome, act like the Romans. I also see people say, if you're not going to conform to the new norm, why would you stress yourself to come to travel to another country? If you know you're not going to obey their rules, why do you even stress yourself? Why do you even take the pains of leaving your own country? Now, you guys, if you're a Muslim here, if you should go to the comment section right now, I want you to explain it in your own ways, your laws. Do you think it is truly compatible with the Western laws? Do you think it is? Because normally, if you travel to a place, you're to adapt. I would say you are to adapt to the new culture, not to colonize it. What was on the cartoon? What was drawn? And why will drawing something on, how will cartoon lead to the of 12 people? Where does free speech come to play? Because that is one of the things that the Western world, really pride themselves of. Free speech. What do you think about this issue, you guys? Let me know in the comment section.
Murray's interactions with media outlets like Al Jazeera are crucial in shaping public discourse on these issues. The way questions are framed and the subsequent discussions influence public perception and policy debates. For instance, during his Al Jazeera interview, Murray criticised the interviewer for quickly pivoting to concerns about backlash against Muslims rather than focusing on the attack itself. This critique highlights the importance of media framing in discussions about terrorism, free speech, and religious tolerance. The media plays a significant role in either reinforcing or challenging narratives around these events. By focusing on the broader implications of such incidents, media outlets can foster a more nuanced understanding of the underlying issues. Conversely, if they emphasize divisive aspects, they risk exacerbating tensions and polarizing public opinion. In the aftermath of incidents like the Charlie Hebdo attack, there are often calls for policy changes to enhance security and address the underlying causes of such violence. Murray's comments suggest that policy discussions should prioritize the protection of free speech and the security of individuals exercising this right. He advocates for robust measures to prevent terrorist attacks while maintaining the principles of a free and open society.
The way it is going now, you're like fearing for the lives of every journalist out there, fearing for the lives of anybody who says something negative or someone who doesn't support the other people's values. Now you fear for their life because you're like, you just said something, you've offended this particular group of people, and now your life is at risk, and now your life is a danger. Where does free speech come to play?
This approach requires a careful balance. On one hand, there is a need for increased security measures to prevent future attacks. On the other hand, there is a risk that overly restrictive policies could infringe on civil liberties and contribute to a climate of fear and suspicion. Policymakers must navigate these challenges to develop strategies that protect both public safety and individual freedoms.
Writer who's in the country for the Australian Think Inc. event Polarised alongside Dr. Cornel West. His book is The Strange Death of Europe, Immigration, Identity, Islam.
We do have a problem. We have a problem when the failures of Islam throughout the world, the failures of all Islamic societies come here into Britain. Their intolerance of freedom of conscience, their intolerance of apostates, their intolerance of freedom of expression and freedom of speech.
Truth is, the great disappointment of the last 14 years has been that civil society has failed, that we can't do the things to the Islamists that we would do, as I referred to the neo-Nazis.
Please welcome Douglas Murray, everybody. Hello. Welcome, Douglas. Thanks for coming on the show. I know you're very concerned about Western civilization. This show is technically part of the Western canon. Yeah. Thoughts?
Yeah, the decline in a nutshell.
Well, that's a show. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it very much. I just need to make a disclaimer at the top. Myself and the executive producer of this program, Dan Illich, are involved in your tour with Dr. Cornel West in the country. That was separate to the decision to book you on the show. We haven't been bribed into having a neoconservative on the ABC, but I need to put that out there. If people aren't familiar with your work, what is this strange death of Europe that you refer to?
Well, for many years I've travelled as a reporter, as a journalist across the Third World and Middle East, Africa, many of the war zones of these areas, seen many of the places where people are fleeing from. And in 2015, I was reporting from across my continent, across Europe, when people were coming in unprecedented numbers. We were talking about the German population taking in an additional 2% in a single year alone, where basically the German Chancellor said anyone who makes it to Europe can come. And I saw all of this firsthand, and I realized that there was a catastrophe in the making, a catastrophe which I think has already started to unfurl in the years since. I realized this is just a version of a problem that every country is having to think about. And we're very lucky countries, yours and mine. We're countries that people want to come to. And that isn't an easy thing to deal with, because we know that we cannot take in the world, and yet we can't have the conversation about what we can do. And I thought that we need to think about this much more deeply than we are.
The political consequences of that decision sort of flowing through Germany and affecting Angela Merkel. Some changes seem to be happening. They're trying to get more agreements with North African countries and looking at trying to return some people to where they came from.
Bribed Turkey.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen?
Well, we already know some of the consequences. German elections saw a party that's generally described as far right, the AfD, is now the main party of opposition in the German parliament. Unbelievable social problems, unbelievable problems with freedom of expression. I mean, another data law just came in at the beginning of this year that tries to stop German citizens saying very critical things about their government on social media. And I just, you know, who could predict?
The debates sparked by Murray's views have broader implications for how Western societies manage cultural diversity and religious pluralism. They raise important questions about the limits of free speech, the responsibilities of individuals and communities in a multicultural society, and the role of government in mediating these issues.
Predict any problem from, for instance, suppressing the rage of the German people. Who could foresee any downside to that, you know?
Not me. All good. Okay. What do you think should happen now to address this situation?
Look, I just, as I say, we have to think about this much more seriously and deeply than we've been thinking about it. A lot of people make a lot of very easy social capital, including a lot of politicians make very easy social capital by basically saying, we're generous, we're open, let them come. They quote John Lennon quite often. And this is cheap and too easy, and it's not up to the task in hand. We have to be able to think about the speed of immigration, the type of immigration we do want, and that means the type of immigration that we just don't need more of. These are really ugly and difficult conversations to have, but it's my belief that if we don't have them, other people will have them, and very bad people will have them. I'm not willing to hand that terrain over. Just not willing to do it.
That ugliness is certainly something we're wrestling with in this country. We always have with immigration in Australia, and now our population has hit 25 million people. Some people are concerned solely by the numbers of immigration that we have, others by the makeup of that immigration. Sure. Some are concerned by both. You talk about how London is a minority white city at the moment. Yeah. It's currently reached that point. In the future, there are predictions that the UK and America will become minority white countries. And I guess when I hear those phrases or those concerns, or when I hear people say phrases like, this part of Sydney doesn't look like how Australia is supposed to look, that makes me feel very nervous.
Yeah, rightly.
It makes me wonder, what are these countries supposed to look like, and who gets to decide that?
Sure. Well, it should be decided by governments which should be accountable to the people. And if the people want such a change to happen, then you can do it. The problem I identify across Europe is that it happens in the face of public hopes and public desire, where the politicians end up berating the public rather than trying to listen to them or trying to answer them. And this, again, is a problem that is just exploding everywhere. Look at Italy is one of the founding members of the EU. It's a massively important economy in Europe. And the public there are so angry that they just voted into a government, a party, again, that is generally described as far-right, the League, and a party founded by a comedian, the Five Star Movement, which literally doesn't know what it wants to do. It is a protest vote that has become government, OK? I mean, you can say all sorts of things and make a lot of jokes about Italian politics, but it literally being run by comedians is
sounds fucking awesome, I gotta say.
You should look into this as a career move.
Would anyone vote for me? Well, that was reluctant. What about the way these conversations and the way they affect immigrants who are already here? We could close the borders tomorrow and let nobody in left, where there is a huge immigrant population.
One key consideration is the extent to which societies can accommodate diverse beliefs and practices while maintaining social cohesion and upholding core values. This involves finding common ground where possible, but also recognising that some conflicts may be inevitable. The challenge is to manage these conflicts in a way that respects individual rights and promotes mutual understanding.
In Australia, the phrase, a country built by immigrants is regularly used since the White Australia policy thing, since we wrapped that up.
It depends what you mean by immigrants in Australia. I mean,
sure.
What do you mean when you say that?
Immigrants, people who have immigrated post the White Australia policy. I think certainly that's a big part of it, of what we make up the immigrant population. But indeed, yes.
Because it's an important question. I mean, is somebody an immigrant once they become a citizen? I'd say not.
They cease to be an immigrant.
They cease to be an immigrant. Once you're a citizen, you're not an immigrant anymore.
Right.
You're an Australian.
Yeah. Well, there are plenty of citizens, people who are born and raised from, say, the Sudanese community in Australia. There's a lot of focus on that particular immigrant community in Melbourne at the moment.
Because of the home invasion.
There are some issues surrounding the overrepresentation of that community in crime statistics. Yeah. This video went a little bit viral on Vice Australia last week. This is some Sudanese youth recounting some of the feedback and some of the conversation that's happening online at the moment when it comes to their community.
What more do you want? You people in Canberra, this is our country. Please send them back. They don't deserve to be here, and they are used to fighting and destroying other people's businesses, lives, and homes, for God's sake. Can't you see what is happening? We will be taken over by them, and that is for sure. You are a bunch of idiots if you don't see this happening. I say concealed firearms should be considered in Australia. If they're that much of a danger, they should be shot.
I mean, how do we have this conversation without that kind of shit happening?
Well, look, that's just a risk you're going to have to take, isn't it? Because the alternative is you shut everyone up, which isn't going to work. You're not going to be able to tell people don't speak about things, because they may not speak about things, but they'll keep thinking things. And it's much better that you know what they're thinking than that everyone hides it from you. It's going to be a lot better in the long term. But this points exactly to the centre of a conundrum, which is there are specific issues that specific communities bring, undoubtedly. There are specific benefits that the communities bring, undoubtedly, and specific downsides. One thing which I've seen this throughout Europe. If, for instance, people flee a specific war zone, for instance, Somalia, speak to anyone who's fled Somalia in recent years. They have seen things that you can't imagine. Now, it's very likely that these people also are going to have a different attitude toward violence as a result. And we have seen this in gangs in London in recent years. A Somali gang moves into an area and they are willing to do things that other gangs won't do, and that causes a rise in violence, gang to gang to gang. Okay. That doesn't mean you don't invite any Somalis. It doesn't mean you don't have any asylum policy. But, you're a damn fool if you're not going to think about that and find some way to address it, because otherwise you leave it to people to start gestating and becoming vile and becoming angry against everybody. So, this is the central stupidity of the assumption of multiculturalists who believe in that not as an idea, but as a policy, that you make things multicultural. The central problem they keep on coming to is this. They think in in a diverse society, we should hear.
Douglas Murray's commentary on Al Jazeera highlights significant and contentious issues regarding the intersection of Western values and Islamic beliefs. His arguments underscore the importance of defending free speech and the principle that individuals should not be compelled to adhere to religious laws that they do not follow. These discussions are crucial in shaping public discourse and informing policy decisions in increasingly multicultural societies. The broader implications of these debates touch on fundamental questions about cultural integration, religious tolerance, and the role of media in framing public understanding. As societies continue to navigate these complex issues, it is essential to foster open and respectful dialogue that acknowledges diverse perspectives while upholding the principles of freedom and equality. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and for more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel.